Hello and welcome to Fabric Low Code Nuggets, a bite sized video series where we dive into the exciting and emergent world of low code, no code, and AI digital product innovation. Joining me today, I'm really excited to welcome Brad Sukala to the show. Brad is a veteran of the digital design industry. He served as a UX designer, account lead, project manager, and led the design program at one of Philadelphia's premier firms. Great to have you with us today, Brad. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Paul. I'm excited to be here. Thanks.
Absolutely, Brad. And I could think of no one better to discuss, the future of design as it pertains to, let's say, the evolution of AI and low and no code platforms than yourself. So I'm really excited to jump into this with you, Brad. And on that note, just to jump right in, design as a practice and function and role has been on quite the journey. How do you view that journey in terms of kind of, the phases that design practitioners have went through over the last potentially number of decades, Brad, and where do you see it going in the near future?
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. Good question. I mean, it's been interesting through in the software world, I think, to see the evolution of how design has played a part and where that design has kind of lived. I mean, early on, before I was even doing this, right? I mean, I think you had a very developer-driven industry in terms of software, and that these were the people that were really like forging the path and figuring out how to make computers do the things that we want and need them to do. And so that necessarily was like a pretty narrow band, and it was experts designing for experts, and you had like command line and things like that, and you started to get a little bit of a interface design early on, and you might even see them still in like really old systems that are still serving as a backbone in some industries. Like I think banking is one that we think about often, but that sort of gave way in the you started to see that with consumer based like GUIs or graphical user interfaces where you got the Mac and then Windows and those things. But I think it really took off in the early 2000s once we started getting our phones and started having across the consumer spectrum a real demand for high level interaction design in all of the things that we do, not just those consumer interactions, or not just what we do at home, but what we do at work. And so I think that really drove an explosion in the UX design world. And you started seeing there being sort of an equal seat at the table there of designers and developers. But again, it's still experts, but maybe then we're designing for broader audiences. And that was sort of the evolution there. Now, I think what you're seeing a lot of with the low and no code is that you're having this sort of democratization of development, and that's opening up that for so many people to build their own apps. And so then there's a question there of how do we think about design in that case? Like, do you still need a designer? What are sort of the principles to keep in mind as you're building those apps? Because I think the code aspect has been democratized. The design aspect, we need to think about that a little bit more still, I think.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Brad, as you think about the future of design. And I think one of the questions you posed was, well, what is the function, if any, that designers will play in this ecosystem? And for me, I see design and product as the rock stars of the next wave of product development, because, as you said, that kind of builds part of it. And I still think we're always going to need software developers, or at least kind of individuals that can take a business problem and build a product on the other side. Will they need to kind of build it by coding with semicolons and understanding kind of the syntax of every single line of code? Probably
Right.
not, but we will still need individuals to translate those business problems into solutions. And for me, the central part of that are designers and product individuals. In fact, what I feel is that those individuals will have the ability in the very near future to actually build these products, right? So to put these products together using visual interfaces, shift them into production, and leverage kind of our more technical talent to then iterate and innovate on top of those MVP products and so on. So yeah, fully agree with that perspective, Brad. And I do
Yeah.
see a significant shift of empowerment in terms of kind of what our designers will do for us going forward in that ecosystem. But it does bring me on to my next question, and Brad, how do you see then the world of low code, no code, and AI impact product and design work from a tactical perspective? Day to day, what does that remit look like going forward?
Yeah. I mean, you kind of alluded to it a moment ago, Paul, is like, it's really, I think the biggest impact is um, ensuring that whoever is using these tools, like it underlines the importance of understanding what you want your tool to do, and then the steps that people need to go through in order to achieve that goal. So you might have, and I'm sure anyone stepping up to one of these tools does have an idea of like, well, this is what I want someone to achieve um, at the end of using this tool or product. But do you really know all those steps between A and Z to get them to that point?
Yeah.
And um, you know, I feel like these conversations, it's always a little cliche to bring up a Steve Jobs quote, but sometimes they're too good.
Right.
So he had one about the design. It was something along the lines of design is more than just what it looks like. Design is how it works. And I think that's a real critical thing to keep in mind here, is that a lot of the design process that we talk about is, and I use that with like kind of the, I think, big D word design. It's not just the UI and the visuals of it. It's how is this person going to move through these steps in the process to get to that point. And the polish and the look and the feel, that comes in time as you refine those steps. But I think that's the real key thing.
So do
Um,
you see it then, Brad, as, and this is great clarification. I
yeah,
don't believe that, um, a lot of individuals understand maybe that delineation, right? Between, well, what does it look like? What are the high fidelity comps or designs that we're going to build? And I think certainly I did in the past understood that that was the job of a designer.
yeah,
But I believe what you're saying, Brad, is that it's broader than that. It's far broader than that, actually. It's about the experience. It's about understanding what we need to do from defining a problem through to building that solution from an experience perspective. What are the touch points?
correct.
What does great look like from a product perspective? And obviously, our designs, right, our kind of, UI will lean into that, but it's again far broader, I think is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, Paul. I mean, I think that one of the key things that that brings to mind is really this concept of understanding what problems you're trying to solve. And there's this framework that I think a lot of folks out there might be familiar with, called the jobs to be done approach. And so this was the work of a guy named Clayton Christensen at the Harvard Business School. And there's a lot on there if you search him or search jobs to be done on the internet. But the concept is that people hire products and services to do jobs for them. And so if you need a hole in the wall, you might hire a drill, right? Or if you need a really big hole in the wall, you might hire a sledgehammer. I don't know, it depends.
Sure,
But
sure.
you're hiring these products and services to do jobs for you. And um, the reason that this kind of came to mind was he tells this sort of foundational story about this approach that he came up with when he and his colleagues were doing some consulting work with a fast food chain, and they weren't happy with their milkshake sales, and they wanted to, find a way to increase those sales. And so they did the standard things where they would add new flavors, or they would, run a campaign, or these different things, and interview some of the people that were buying the milkshakes, and it um, wasn't really ever moving the needle for them. And so what Professor Christensen and his colleagues did was just observe the people that were buying them over the course of a day. And they saw that there was like a surprisingly large percentage of people buying them first thing in the morning.
Huh.
Like I 40% or something like that, if I remember correctly. And so they interviewed them and said, why are you buying a milkshake now? This kind of seems a little strange. And what it turned out was that those people were on their commutes to work. They, didn't have time to have breakfast at home. They were in their business attire. They had a long drive, and they were bored. So they're hungry, bored, and dressed nicely and didn't want to get a mess on themselves. And having a milkshake that was super thick and satisfying
Right.
and in a straw all sort of like tick the boxes for them. And so they, came up with a variation of a milkshake that was had more had was actually thicker. They had a bigger straw. They put like pieces of fruit in it, so it like felt healthier, as a breakfast type thing, and saw that increase in sales. So I think the lesson there is to really, before you dive in too far in building those steps out, talk to your users, understand like what are they trying to accomplish, what are those jobs that they need to get done, and that is going to give you a lot of clues in terms of how to design that system.
Yeah, it's such a great point, Brad. I read an article recently that suggested 80% of products fail because they fundamentally don't solve a problem, um, or they're not helping out with the job to be done for a particular subset of customers, as opposed to potentially what a lot of individuals may think around, the execution or the build or the design of the product. They're important for sure, and certain products can fail for those reasons, but the greater majority of products fail because they don't meet a market or a customer need. So deeply familiar with the framework, Brad, and it is one of the most important models that we can use as we look to identify product market fit. Fantastic, Brad. It does kind of lead me to another question that I had around maybe the core function of, design, graphic design, as we move forward, Brad.
Mhm.
Candidly, I've not been impressed at all with any of the AI platforms that are out there from a visual perspective. Um, they will likely get there and improve, but by using command line to elicit a design to meet a function, I've not seen that work well yet on any of the platforms that I've tried. So, yeah, more specifically, I suppose today and as these platforms evolve, Brad, how will this impact graphic design? The need for individuals to actually create these designs for digital products.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I would view them um, in regards to graphic designs similarly to how I would view them from a development perspective. That these tools are awesome at following that Pareto principle, that 80/20 rule, that they're going to get you like 80% of the way there, and
Right.
then there's this 20% extra that you kind of need to keep in mind, that maybe, and it depends on who your audience is, right? So like a lot of the work that I've done over the years has been for internal clients. So we're building these complex business systems that employees of the company that I'm working with are going to use them. And so those have different criteria. You still want a pleasant experience and a good design, but there's a different level of refinement I think that's expected for on a consumer product versus an internal product. So in some cases, these tools might be doing the job for you, and it's good enough design,
Sure.
Um, but I do think that as part of your process as you're going to market, if you think about using the built-in design patterns that these platforms have to validate your product market fit and to get feedback from your users, and that you're not just designing for yourself or an N of one or to your friends and family, you're getting feedback on those things, then that's the time to start engaging with a UI designer or a graphic designer or someone who can then look at what you've done so far and that has been validated from a functionality perspective and continue that iterative process. Um, they are likely, just as if you bring a developer in to add more complex functionality that maybe the platform doesn't cover, and they're going to have some ideas, a designer is going to have ideas too that might push your design in a different direction than you were thinking. And that's normal and expected. And I would say good. That's part of that iterative process.
Yeah.
But I would think like definitely plan for plan for that 20% at the end, and also think of it as more than just a coat of paint. Think of it as like real value add to the experience that may push things further.
Fantastic. So, yeah, what I've seen, I guess, as a trend across the board, is that we'll gain great efficiency from, all of these innovations, these platforms, these tools from AI specifically.
Yeah.
But my view on it is that we're moving into a world where software is going to, interact with everything that we do. So we're going to have a lot more products coming to market. In my view, the products that are coming to market, we'll shift them to market faster using the efficiencies that you just referenced. But there's still a deep need for individuals that can, first of all, on the very left hand of that product development sphere, understand what the problem statement is and what we want to build, and then secondly, take what's put in place by these platforms, these frameworks, by AI, and shift that to a more mature state for consumer facing problems. So still a deep need, at least at this point, for human interaction in this full kind of ecosystem of building
Yeah.
new products.
Yeah, it makes me think of so when I was leading a design team at one of my prior employers, one of the things we were really focusing on was improving our efficiency as an agency or as a consultancy, and that we weren't reinventing the wheel with every client. And I mean, we definitely viewed ourselves as a bespoke design agency, and that we're designing for our clients, and so we didn't want things that come off the shelf. But to achieve that efficiency, we were starting to implement some, I would say like some templates, some frameworks, and from some folks on my team, there's always this natural pushback to feel like, whoa, I need to design what the client wants, and and to solve their unique problem. And that's true, but there's so much that goes into every engagement, no matter how custom it is, that is, you know, we need to answer similar questions to start off. We need to establish these baselines. And that's kind of the same across the board. And so having those starting points, those frameworks, those templates, or here, these tools that we're talking about, that just gets you to that more customized stuff faster. And you can
Right.
spend more time and more mental cycles on the thing that's really going to be differentiating versus all these baseline and sort of rote aspects of it. So I'm a
Yeah.
big fan.
Which happens, I think, in a lot of technology trends where we used to host a lot of our servers and infrastructure within the organization. That shifted to the cloud, became, as a service. And all of a sudden, we don't have to worry about that infrastructure anymore, which is fantastic. You can focus on your core capability as a business, which is probably building great products or delivering a great service. I see that as a corollary where we're not working on the foundations necessarily because they're most likely common across the board. And we can then focus on the value add capabilities that we want to build on top of that. Fantastic stuff, Brad. We are almost at a close. Brad, what I like to do on these conversations then is get a sense for the future from our guests in terms of what's really exciting to you. I know there's a lot of nervousness, but also a lot of excitement in the industry today. Where do you see the future, Brad, in terms of design more specifically, but also broadly speaking? Is there anything you're particularly excited by?
I mean, I think like a lot of people, I'm pretty um, excited. In excited is an interesting word. Excited. I'm excited about AI. And I think I'm sort of hesitating with the word excitement because like excitement is can be a positive thing, and excitement can be sort of a nervous thing too,
Sure.
right? I think it's lining up to be like a really impactful technology. And I think that there is with a lot of things, I'm going to fall in sort of the middle of these two camps where, there's a lot of people that are concerned about it and like, are we putting the appropriate safeguards in place? And I think those are important things to be mindful of. I think there's a lot of people that are just like full throttle. Let's go. I think there's like a middle ground to be found there. And there's going to be some navigating of like what that means for our different industries. But for me, just using it now as just a a booster to like my productivity or to, figure out problems. I mean, it's a classic one is it's great for complex Excel formulas that, I always forget how to write. So, but like
Right.
those types of things, or, the Microsoft Copilot stuff that I know is like a big boon to developers. Those are amazing tools, and to see those things start to come into the design world, I think is going to help designers to again focus on the places where they can really differentiate, provide value, and not spend time, doing the things that these algorithms can help us with.
Yeah, fantastic. I think we'll likely see a lot of resistance in many different facets of, the world, frankly, where AI may come in and change how people operate and fundamentally change roles. But I think on the other side of that, which happens with all innovations, we'll see a lot of opportunities for those that adapt and change as a result. Brad, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. A really great conversation. And to those listening, we hope you enjoyed this chat. We're incredibly excited to bring you AI low code and no code to help you thrive as an organization. Please do feel free to reach out if you'd like to learn more. And once again, Brad, it's been such a wonderful conversation. It's great to connect with you again. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Paul. Always great to talk with you.
All right. Cheers, Brad.
See ya.